and I'd like to welcome you all in your spare time after dinner in a post-dinner dip, as I'm struggling with. No, not seriously. Um, what I'd like to do is to take you on a little journey through the tools that we've made. So you not only see the what, but also understand the how and the why. For that to be successful, I have to share my screen. So let me check that you see that. Hopefully you can see my slide and now have a view. So this is me, silly me. As a brief intro, my daily job is to come up with playful solutions for wicked problems in society. And I turn more and more towards strategic design. So when for years I've been working on, let's say, small scale solutions. More and more I'm part of processes and trajectories where I'm advising the overall layout and execution of projects and the design of that. I'm also a senior lecturer and coach, and some of the people present here know me from the Master Crossover Creativity, of which I'm part of the team. And yeah, my mainstay is to work on innovation projects or supervise and support people that are working on innovations. In my spare time, I'm a maker. During the daytime, I work with my head, and in the weekends, I work with my hands, do a lot of woodwork and other design stuff that keeps my brain happy. I'm a father of 3 plus 2, so I've got a how do you say that? The composed family of 2 sides. Very happy with that, and I'm easily bored. So you have a bit of an image of who you see talking this evening. But it's not about me. This is all about you and your ideas. And what I like to do is to briefly take you through the entire journey that we've mapped out in the metro lines and the workbook. And the reason to do this is what you'll soon find out, and obviously maybe you already know, is whenever you want to embark on a journey as ambitious as you probably have in your head, you need a compelling story. Because one way or another, somewhere along the line, you will be talking to people to scale up your idea to a size that is worthy of the idea. So this might be talking to a bank to safeguard a loan or get some funding or expand your business, or you might be talking to institutions or other stakeholders that you need to convince to become part of your journey. And of course, you need a compelling story for your future clients, whoever they are, wherever they are, to make sure that they embrace your solution, your service, your product, whatever you're developing. So the question is, how do you build those narratives? And I say narratives because it's not one story. Depending on who you will be facing, you might need to make adaptations to that story. And I believe that what we've done collectively in the project is to create this toolkit. And this is not a magic shoebox that you open up and it will magically take all your trouble away and give you the gold ideas. I think the most important aspect of it is that we have tried to the best of our might and experience and knowledge in the consortium to come up with right questions, to ask you the right questions. And through the activities in the workbook, that's one way of being confronted with those questions and maybe finding some answers. So that is, let's say, the humble proposition of this toolkit. It is a collection of sharp, carefully formulated, carefully phrased questions. And an important reason to do that is to make the implicit explicit, because I know for sure that many things you take for granted, or you find logical, or you think everybody knows, that is not true. And in being compelling in your story, it is vitally important that you make all those elements explicit for other people that are less involved, less passionate about the subject, less knowledgeable about the subject, understand the narrative. So we see this whole trajectory also as a process of articulation. And an important part of that is through the ateliers is also to be able to articulate among yourselves again and across the borders of culture and backgrounds, because it may sound strange, but I find international or cross-cultural collaboration so exciting because you're confronted with other ideas and backgrounds and concepts that people do that you do not share with these people, which almost automatically enforces you to be more articulate about what you do. I have, as a brief example, I had to teach for a week in India to young, very talented people. And I discovered in my first lecture that I did not share a single piece of cultural reference with many of them when it came to movies, games, any odd repository I would use to draw examples from, I could simply not use. When I asked them about the games they played, I didn't know any of them. So we had a good laugh about that. And then it forced me to be finding different ways of articulating my background that they had to do for their backgrounds. And it was such a wonderful process. So you might have seen this already in the toolkit. This is what we call the metro line. And what I'd like to do today is to give a comprehensive overview of the whole, without going into all the detail of everything, but you have one sort of comprehensive bit, even to look back upon, maybe to understand the whole thing and also why we did it. So the center of the universe, as I said, is you, or your idea, your mission. And every circle here represents one of the metro lines, of course, and one of the categories of the assignments in the workbook. And the first station we'll hit upon is identity. And this is a really important one to start with, because before we start talking about your ideas or your concepts, it's really important to, in the process of articulation, as we mentioned, to tune in into your inner belief systems and your inner values and discuss with yourself or with others, who are you? What is your world vision? And what is your motivation? What is your drive? Because all these aspects are partly responsible for the fact that you're here on a rainy or cold evening in your spare time sitting here. But it is also the driving force behind your project or behind your idea. And since we are talking about social entrepreneurship, values are more important than anything else. If I'm correct, you are here because you're passionate about something. You feel a strong urge to do this in the world, that the world needs this. And to bring this more to the surface, whereas all these things are so deeply embodied in yourself, is important. And the reason is that all these values, inner beliefs, and drive has to find its way into your solution as well. It has to become a quality of the work you deliver. So that is the first step also in the workbook, is to, if you've not done that yet, is to try and find that out about yourself. And if you're, one of the wonderful ways of doing this is to do small interviews with others, or let yourself be interviewed, because it will bring this to the surface, triggered by questions from others. The next step is about creativity. So after you've identified those core beliefs and values, of course, the next thing that takes center stage is your idea, your solution, or your service, or the concept you're working on. And creativity is a dangerous word. It's often used, often misused. In many situations, it's mystified. Personally, I believe that creativity is a muscle and you can train it. I don't think that people are born more creative than others, to be honest. There are things like talent. Some people have talent as a sort of raw potential that is so imminent that you have to do something with it almost. But creativity is something that can be developed and can be trained. But the pedagogy of creativity is really difficult. How to make someone creative, or how to stimulate creativity. And some of the students in our master's program struggle with that. They think, many people believe from themselves that they are not creative. It would go wildly beyond this evening to do a quick how to do this creativity thing. But there's one little trick I like to share with you, because more than once it has worked. I wouldn't say miracles, but it worked really well for people that were struggling with its inner notion or their inner ideas about creativity. So here it goes. Let's say there's a particular situation in which your concept is positioned, a certain environment. And often your notion right now of how the situation is very well developed. And I would call this part the thesis. So this is a current situation, your current observations of that situation, your opinions about that, your feelings, the issues in that situation, and your personal experiences. And these are quite possibly easily to jot down. So let's say in this fictitious project in a particular neighborhood, the things you could observe or feel strongly about are things like, I see there is little social interaction. I know from people in this neighborhood that they are lonely. I also notice that there's no dedicated space for these people to meet, although there is a space, a local sort of community center, but it's really derelict, and it is so sad as an environment that nobody wants to go there, and there's no social cohesion as a result. Let's say this is the current status quo, and you've got emotions connected to the situation. You have an opinion about this. An easy thing to do is to draw up this list, and it may be a long list, or a list of feelings, a list of observations, a list of opinions, a list of facts, and then simply on the right side, take the exact opposite. And that's what I call the antithesis. So if you do that, in this particular example, no social interaction would be opposed by a lot of social interaction. Loneliness will be opposed to strong connections, or people that are lonely that are combining them into groups. No space dedicated might be a dedicated space. If it is derelict, it should be well designed and warm and cozy. And if there's no social cohesion, you should strive or aim for people that can experience social belonging. The moment you've got this list on the right, as you can see, you're shaping an idea. You're creating an image of what could be. You're creating almost a vision of what it should become. And that is an excellent start. So in the mystification of creativity, there can be a notion that it has to come out of the blue by divine inspiration, never seen before, never experienced before. That is not necessarily the case. This simple act of thesis and antithesis might lead you well into an area where you can see opportunities or shape your ideas accordingly. So that's for now about creativity. Then we have to talk about benefits. And benefits, with that we mean, what are the actual benefits for the target group, on the people on the receiving end? And the reason that is important is, with all your heart and emotions and high value system and ambition and strongly felt beliefs, meaning to do something for other people, still does not guarantee that the other people are wanting what you think they want. In other words, in this exercise, which has to do with benefits, try to reverse the perspective and genuinely go into contact or conversation with these others and verify that what you think they need, whether that's something they actually need, whether they consider that as a benefit. In my creative practice, many times I've come across doctors that wanted to develop something innovative, some kind of app, and they were vocalizing to me that they were doing this in the interest of the patients. But when I would sit down with actual patients, ask them about the benefits of that solution, they often would formulate completely other issues or other problems that would prioritize for them over the solution thought about by the doctor. So this is a verification step. And in design terms, we often call this to empathize, is to make sure that what you have in mind is actually what people have as an issue or problem, or something they need. Because otherwise you might waste a lot of time and effort in coming up with something that in the end nobody will use, won't pay for, or whatever. And the list is not finished yet, because there's more to discover beyond just the benefits. And this notion is important because the way we started, the way we originate this story, at least with identity, this means it's up close and personal. Usually the kind of themes, the kind of subjects that people like you or students in our courses are, this is very close to your skin, close to your heart. But these personal goals might be different than your business goals. If you identify the two, then your social business becomes you, or you become the social business. And that is not a wise thing to do. So what we propose actually also in the workbook is to see the business as a separate entity, almost a separate persona from you as a person. So whenever you have personal goals, try to reframe them or rewrite them and say, what would be then the business goals from the business as an entity, if you know what I mean. Because they might be slightly different or slightly differently phrased. And your business might not succeed, but you will always succeed. It's funny, I don't think we've got anybody from America, but in the United States, if you fail a business, it's called a battle scar. You gain prestige. And some entrepreneurs can brag about the fact that they had 4 businesses that went bankrupt before they became a millionaire. It is just a battle scar. In the Netherlands, going bust with your company is a failure, and it is often perceived as such and not talked about among friends. It's certainly not a battle scar you show in public. So there are very different contexts and situations where people frame or value things like business success or business failure and personal success or personal failure. So one sort of advice in this section, in this discovery section, is to try and separate the two, but keeping them aligned. Yeah, so it's not separation in terms of divergency, but just see them as 2 different entities that need their own kind of definition. Okay, then the next part. This is about value or values. You could also say it's plural. And this is an important aspect compared to, let's say, purely business model canvas approach, because preferably or possibly the reason you are here is that you're not just in it for the money. This is not just, I have an idea, I want to become rich. So if it's not about money, then what else is there? There are very many different or comparative definitions of value other than monetary value. Although we live in a day and age where almost everything is calculated in the end in terms of currency or value of money, but we aim for things like social value, cultural value. I mean, there's so many other value systems that we can tap into than just the money value. But then still, in the end, there will be some kind of transaction going on between you, your idea, and some people. And even if it is not monetized, it still will be a transaction. And then there's a series of questions that resonate strongly with the benefits section that are things like, what will they get? Why would it matter for them in their daily lives? Why would they pay for it? What problem do you solve? And what exact who is your sharp target audience? Are you addressing everybody, or are you focusing on a particular kind of young people? And the reason I say this is this, in many innovations or many innovative ideas and people working on them, they can be quite optimistic about the time other people, their users, are willing to break out of their daily schedules to do something. When we come up with the notion of a Sense Evening Academy, we are competing with very, very strong players. We are competing with family, competing with children, put to bed early by Hugo, but still, we are competing with them. We are competing with Netflix. We are competing with internet, we are competing with television, we're competing with games, we're competing all over the place. So in my project, I always problematize this point, because especially if it's your own idea, you're really carried away by it and really fancy it, you tend to be over optimistic about this competition with other temptations and other activities in life, in ordinary people. So again, going back to the doctor's example with the app, in the beginning, this was 2007, what was it? In the beginning, in the app economy, if you came up with a new app, there was quite a big chance it did not exist yet, and people were downloading, installing, and removing apps at an incredible pace, 30 odd apps a week. If you look at current people's smartphones, most smartphones are stabilized. They have 50 apps on it, and somebody new has to come up with an extremely good new novelty, better executed idea for this app to find its place onto your smartphone, just as an example. So again, here, competition with existing apps, existing services is huge. So to find and be honest to yourself about this value you have to offer to other people, and in the end will have to carry the weight of some kind of financial transaction, is a really important bit. And it's in this area also you have to reflect back on the identity side, because your heart and your soul should still be in your idea at this phase. So some cross references, are important also. Then we turn to marketing with a number of ideas and notions to go with that. And I think one of the most important ones in this phase, and this is pretty far along your journey in your idea, but how do people know your solution exists? And although we do live in a time and space where apparently we've got more means for communication from home, from behind your laptop than ever before, it might be more problematic than ever before. Again, in this space, in this how do people know, you compete against the whole world. So to get people's attention is a difficult bit to achieve. One way of doing it is to make sure that your service, product, idea has very strong and very authentic brand values. That is becoming more and more important in these days and age. And you see many large corporates struggle because they used to apply, let's say, classical marketing to sell people stuff they didn't need. But current day users, younger generations, really hate that. So they value authenticity, and they've got quite good means using online communities, peers, to verify whether the message of a company is an authentic message, which is a difficulty for companies like Shell to try and do something green, just to make it very explicit and almost over the top. But it is a struggle. Many companies struggle with this. So as a small new initiative, with this social entrepreneurship heart you've got, it should not be too difficult to convey this authenticity. But another problem, and again, this is also something I come across in many of my own work projects, is not so much creating the solution or creating good messaging or storytelling about that solution. We all can build websites. There are tools for that, don't cost much, pretty good templates. If you want to use a template, you can be up and running with a web shop in 3 days if you make yourself really angry, follow some tutorials. The real issue is this: what will be the touch point between your solution and the people you're striving for, aiming for? Because without that touch point, your website might exist, Your social channels might be streaming. Your posters might be put on posts. But if your users do not touch all those channels, all those messages, if there's no connection, nobody will know. And there are many people that rely on, let's say, especially large companies, Disney, they can spend millions on saturating social media channels so that you cannot avoid it. And so many of the large companies, large institutions spend an awful lot of money to saturate social media. So at least you come across it once. But that is not something you want to compete with. So one of the things here is to be very cunning, smart, savvy, and try to find dense hotspots or concentration points where you might easily get in touch with your target group instead of blasting out in the universe, because there's so much of that. So again, in the doctor and app example, if the doctor has created an app and the app is good and it works, then they think that if they publish it in the App Store, story closed. As if, again, in the App Store, there are how many apps? 2.5 million? So if it is not being retrieved somehow, picked up by media, selected by some people that is influential, you won't find it. And if you would search for it by name, you would find 20 alternatives. So those are issues that are really prevalent in current days marketing strategies and challenges. Then, after we've done the marketing, there is also an important thing, that you are not Superman or Superwoman. You cannot be good at everything. And again, in chiming in with, let's say, the identity session, I think it's important to understand your own strengths and weaknesses and ask for help. I recently saw a nice interview with, I think it was Steve Jobs, who said people often forget to ask for help. And in my early career, I asked lots of people for help and they gave it to me. I would say that Steve Jobs is not the average guy. And if he would say, hand me your car keys, you would probably somehow get convinced to do that. But there is a strong sense in there. If you don't ask for help and you don't try, you never know if you get it. And especially in the context of our Master Crossover Creativity program, I've come across quite some examples of people, high-ranking officials on the level of a general, for example, where one of the students would be brave enough to ask for help from the general and got it, just got it. There was a student that wanted to fly to a debrief area of military personnel. It was in Cyprus. And she wanted a ticket to get there. And she didn't want to pay for it. So she asked the general, can you get me to Cyprus? And the answer was, yes. Is that all? And within 2 weeks, she had a ticket to fly to Cyprus and meet the military. So asking for help, what it means, you have to know who to turn to. What do you need? So in the workbook, we offer you some guidance to formulate the kind of support, the kind of people that will be able to help you. And there might be many, and there are different people in different phases of the development of your idea. So you have to be careful and time it right, when you need it and when to ask for it. And a simple tip or trick that might work is something that I would call snowball networking. Whenever I use my network to find somebody to help me, my initial point of contact is the best person I have in my network. And often these people are wanted or they are busy, so they might say, yeah, I would love to help you, but I don't have time. The snowball idea is then ask that particular person that you trusted in the first place and you had shortlisted to say, can you recommend me somebody that you think would help me? And what you do is you activate a specialized network from that person that probably know more people like him or her. And then they will do a sort of shortlisting for you. They know you, they know their network, and they think, for this person, I think you might have, yes, you should contact. So there is a kind of moderation taking place automatically. And if that particular person you will relate to cannot help you, if you ask the same question again, they, in their turn, will still be in a relevant network, etc. So the snowball method, as you would do in a library searching for literature as an academic, this kind of snowball networking works also well to keep a high level of quality in the people you are recommended or you want to work with. And then the final stage of this explanatory journey, this is about resources. So this is everything else but people you might need for your project. And I made a distinction here between stuff and services. So stuff is material. This is what you can sort of touch, grab, buy, put somewhere. This ranges from office supplies to space to tables to installations you want to use in the street, whatever. Services are more intangible. This can be software services or everything else that is, not solid. But drawing up a list of this is important because usually the support and resources might be the areas where you could have to spend money or have to invest. Although there's probably a lot you can find if you ask for help in secondhand or other ways of getting that material. But this is where it becomes the nitty-gritty. When you've gone through all these aspects, you have all the building blocks for the compelling narratives we started with. And the reason there are other strategies you could follow to come up with the same result is just trying to start conversations and then see what people would ask and then remedy your narrative to take away those questions, which is fine. The only thing is, and again, I'm talking from personal work experience, sometimes or many times, you might only have one shot. And I hear myself saying this, and it sounds like a bad American sort of business movie-like quote, but there are some special encounters you have or special people you might have an appointment with. And then I've had situations where I had one shot and spoiled it by not prepping my narrative right and didn't get the second chance. Or that people would lose their trust or emerging interest in you and you wouldn't get a second chance, even if you asked them. So there is a level of importance to get your narrative straight before you start going after the important partners that you might need to get your idea on the road in the way you want it. So that's why extensive preparation, like we sort of project in this toolkit, is to avoid this risk. And still you might talk to people and they will not go along with you, of course, but answering questions before they are being asked is in general a good practice, as goes with, I think, teaching and presenting. So these are all questions that will be asked if you talk to a bank, an institution, or any other professional party you want to liaise with somewhere on your journey. If you tie it all together, you get a canvas. And this is what we call our social business canvas. And I don't know if everybody of you is familiar, but there is also a well-known famous canvas, which is called the business model canvas, that almost every institution that does something with entrepreneurship or money will sell to or shelf out to their students, which is absolutely a fine tool. It's absolutely fine. But we felt when we were doing the project that we could not express the kind of social entrepreneurship and its importance in that particular canvas. So what we are doing, and I think we explained this in the early stages of kicking off this trajectory with you, we are developing a continuation of the line, of the metro line, that will focus more on this existing business model canvas. So as an extension, but first, if you start with the business model canvas, you have a chance that you are not articulating your values and your heart and your emotions properly into your project. And you start talking to people like investors or banks or whatever institution you need, and they use their traditional business language, and they might squeeze the soul out of your idea. So to be able to have a strong personal position in that conversation with those parties, we felt that we first wanted to do this with exercise with all you all. First, build a clear imagery and a strong position about your social entrepreneurship. But then after that, you still have to be able to talk the language of the business as business. If you don't, you might not like it, you might hate it, you might distaste it, but it is a language that other people will use when they talk to you. And again, in healthcare, I was doing a project and we were going to meet investors. We had done a prototype. And I had preparatory conversations with people that we were going to meet this party. And they said, oh, well, you will be grilled. I said, why? I said, well, they've got this long list of questions they will fire away at you. I said, what questions? And somehow I got my hands on a list or a sort of repository of the kind of questions they were asking. They sent out some of them to parties that were interested, but I got a longer list. And together with the doctor I was working on the project, we got through the list and prepared answers on every single one of them. And fortunately, we had a very good working prototype. So we could deliver answers. And we were sitting down with these two people and they went through that list. And that list was based on the, let's say, the business canvas language, hardcore IP stuff. And it was not the realm where we were in with the doctor. We were trying to create an innovative idea to help young people with mental problems and to be upfront early on in the detection of the issues. And so we were very much in it with our hearts, but we had to deal with these investors. And I must say, it was a very valuable experience and a learning experience. And basically, because we got through the list, and these investors became more anxious by the minute because they kept firing questions to us and we had answers. We'd been prepped. In the end, we didn't work out with the investors because the doctor I worked with changed hospitals. So the whole adventure took a different turn. But being able to be prepared for those conversations with those kind of people is really important. And that's where the second line of the metro in the end will help you go through. But this first stage, the social entrepreneurship stage, this is where you build the part of the narrative and the strong emotional or social dimension that you want to be part of this project. That's what you build with this framework. And I think that's what I wanted to show you for now.